Hey guys, Ramble time. So I took a week off from posting on this channel, and it wasn't a planned thing. I was just overworked. And in that time, I did post on the Breakfast Club channel. I'll link that in the description box below, in case you were needing your fix and need even more of me in makeup videos, because I didn't give you some content. Well, there you go. But in the past week, I've seen some videos on other channels that they're not normally what I like to see. Normally, I cringe every time I see somebody say, "It's time that we had an honest discussion," or "I've decided to change my content up a bit," or anything like that. Videos announcing what your content's going to be in the future is not something I want to watch. Do it. Don't say that you're going to do it, and then have like a 90% chance of just not posting a video in the next couple months. Just do what you say you want to do, right? So you don't see those kind of videos from me where I'm like, "Oh, I need to take a week off. I'm burnt out. The subject matter's burnt out. I'm tired of being harassed." That's not me. You'll get the videos when I make them. And so that week off just happened. Like, when I make these videos, I post them. I don't pay attention to, like, do I have other videos that I've posted in the same day or in the last 24 hours that I'm shorting views from because I'm not letting that one get seen enough before I post another video? Fuck that. I just posted a video, and here I am in the same t-shirt, same setup, sitting down to record another video, and it's just going to happen that way. You get it when you get it. There's no upload schedule here. But I did have a couple of days in a row where I had posted every single day, and I was feeling pretty proud of that. I had a streak going of like 10 days. And then last week happened. And let me tell you about last week. The biggest reason why no content got posted was because I was just overworked. I was putting in a lot of overtime at my job. But there was also, as I mentioned in a previous video, I did go to some things that I thought might have been interesting, and it turned out that they weren't. They weren't noteworthy enough for me to put into a video. One of them was a honey festival, and although Misty got to purchase 2 types of honey that were very expensive, and she'll be eating them, that was it. It was, what I was expecting was a giant festival with, like, pop-up tents and stuff where people would just have their stuff for sale and whatnot, and it was like 20 vendors and was not anything remarkable. And I was like, well, god damn it, they're really good at promoting themselves on Facebook for what they actually turned out to be. And then we went to a chalk art festival, which I thought for sure, because I'm very interested in art, would be something interesting. And this festival was going on in Centennial, and they had these, it was like a parking lot, and the areas people got to enter their chalk art into were basically parking spaces. And this contest was over the entire weekend. So people came on Saturday and started drawing, and that's when we arrived. And then, like, I looked at the state that their art was in, and I'm like, well, we don't have time tomorrow to come in because I'm going to be working extra hours at my job. And everything's pretty much in a state of, like, maybe 20% done, you know? And yeah, it's cool to have like a before and after shots, or when you're making videos of like people making art and you can see it like stop motion, and you know, you get to see hours, you know, in a matter of minutes. That's awesome. I love those videos, but we were just there at like right the beginning of it, and I just wasn't feeling it. Like, showing people setting up to make art was all I would be able to show you, because like most of the art wasn't even started. You know, people were putting in grids because they were using the grid method of like making a collage on paper with the grid method, and then like putting grids on the ground to be able to do their art that way. And I'm like, the grids are there, but the art isn't. This is just, why are we here? You know, we got some Kona ice, which is like a snow cone made with like stevia and sugar so that it lowers the calorie content, and it sucked, and it tasted nasty, and yeah, there was just nothing that I wanted to share about that experience. So those would have been like a couple of videos that I would have been able to edit and render through the week that just didn't happen because we went to some really bogus events. So that's the reason for my week off from YouTube. Also, I just didn't have anything to say about some of the recent current events because I don't feel like you guys need to see my opinion on every goddamn thing. There are a lot of YouTubers who feel that if something happens and there is a headline, that their audience wants to know their opinion on it. I am not that type of YouTuber. I'm not going to give you every opinion that I have on every goddamn thing. And I was very unimpressed by headlines this week. But I was consuming YouTube, right? And I saw a couple of videos that I felt like they all kind of came together in a way that my perspective paints them in a different light, right? And they were that kind of video where they were saying what kind of content they're going to be making in the future, right? So Blair White makes her video saying she's done making political stuff because it ruined her life, right? She was getting a lot of hate. And then there was Sargon of Akkad saying that he was going to move away from a certain kind of content, certain style, and start making passion project videos that he would like to make. Okay. And then there was Demotivator Opinion saying that he was kind of demotivated himself in making videos anymore. I'm like, well, these are some of the big hitters in this the Rad Fem RA, you know, back and forth. That's what I used to call it, that scene that arose out of the skeptic community, the Rad Fem RA group. That when I had to categorize them for my weekly flags recap, I called them that just to give them, a bubble to be in, a category so that I could, talk about like this is, an ongoing fight. But yeah, a lot of them are putting down their swords, and I'm like, what is this? Well, I saw another video by V, where he was talking about the new way of that YouTube is going to be demonetizing certain people for content that is duplicating. And part of that is exactly what some of these channels are doing. They're giving their opinion about news stories by like reading the other people's content on their channel and then just giving their own opinion. And a lot of the examples of what duplicating content is on YouTube's own website. It basically goes over like anyone who's doing reaction style videos, people who are just posting content that is owned by another copyright owner, but they haven't put in their copyright claim yet. And basically, it's also going to cover the ponage artists. The people who like to take another person's video and rip it to shreds by inserting themselves, interspersing throughout their videos. They're going to be caught by the algorithm as duplicating other people's content. And what I realized by seeing this big wave of people just deciding, I don't want to do that kind of content anymore, they're getting ahead of the game. They're getting ahead of the fact that most of the kind of content that they're going to be making is going to be very flaggable for duplication. And it does seem that YouTube is preparing for the Article 11 and Article 13 of the EU's version of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act coming out. It seems like they're preparing for it as an inevitability. Like, that kind of content will not be monetizable anymore. In fact, it might not even be uploadable anymore in some cases. People who basically made their bread and butter out of being content regurgitators. People who read the news to you, people who took other people's work and criticized it and all that. It's legitimate art here in America, but in other countries they have different ideas of what should be fair use. And some countries in the EU have like no sense of fair use, the way that countries like the US have. So YouTube being a globally accessible internet company, they have to pander to a lot of rules that are very much just choking to the artistic expression that we Americans are used to. And it's horrible to see it go down that way. I wish that if YouTube did have to change in order to be accessible in other countries, that they would just start a different video platform in those countries. Because if they don't want to accept that we have fair use as a concept here in the free Western world, then they can just fucking wallow in their own shit and not have any sort of fair use. Fine, fuck them. Leave us alone with our fair use, because we have a different idea of what freedom is. So yeah, I saw these videos all come out in quick succession to each other, and I just felt like all of them are realizing that they're not going to be making any money fighting that war anymore if all they're going to do is be rehashing other people's content, be it news articles that they're reading or parsing up other people's videos. They're just not going to be able to make that money anymore. And it's really telling as to whether people were really passionate about that stuff or they were just in it for the money. There's still going to be people making that style of content, and people who don't even realize that style of content has been done to death in the past. There's always a new generation of people who are just finding conversation that they don't realize that everything in it has been talked to death to the people that were in that conversation years before them. It's going to happen. But I just found it very interesting that once the money was taken away, these guys didn't want to talk anymore. And now, I'm going to tell you about something that did happen in my week that I did think was maybe a little bit noteworthy. But the people that I have mentioned prior to this point in the video, and others in the whole shitlord versus SJW conversation, really kind of ruined my experience in listening to a presentation that I had to go through at work, where I was learning from an advocate the different programs that Medicaid has for people in the LGBT community. And at a certain point, it turned to just talking about programs for trans people. Now, trans people have it bad in the healthcare communities in that like 41% of trans people have attempted suicide, and 92% of those attempts were before the age of 25, right? So there's a big problem there, right? And that's just scary statistics, right? But the one that stands out to me is that 1 in 3 trans people will avoid going to the hospital for even emergent care. Like there's something desperately wrong. Maybe they got like stabbed in the hand or something, or they've got a very horrible sprained ankle because they fell on the ice and it should get medical attention, something like that. 1 in 3 will just avoid going to the hospital altogether because they're used to running into people who don't agree with their lifestyle. So they just don't even want to go. And so, in the hospital network that I was getting this presentation from, they had made a lot of strides in trying to reach out to the trans community. And in their network, they had like over 1,000 trans people from all over the state, right? So the services that they were able to offer, of course, they vary depending on what your health insurance is willing to pay for, right? And most health insurances are pretty progressive, but if it's Medicaid that the people are on because they're poor, there are still things that this hospital network would cover that I was just amazed that this was actually out there for people who like didn't think that maybe they could afford to transition from one gender to the other, and maybe they thought that it was going to be like, out of their financial means. But even Medicaid will cover parts of the cost of transitioning. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So like hormone replacement therapy covered under Medicaid, right? Facial surgery in order to like feminize or masculinize your face, that can be covered under Medicaid. Tracheal shaves. So you have this Adam's apple right here. If you're a dude, and if you didn't take pubertal blockers as a kid, and you grew into being a more masculine person and you didn't want to be, they have a procedure where they will open up your neck and they will shave down your trachea and sew it back together, and Medicaid will pay for that, right? Voice therapy. you can get a therapist to try to help you out with if you didn't have pubertal blockers and your voice got really, really deep like mine. You can get a voice therapist for that. Vaginoplasty. Exactly what it sounds like. There's like a 2-year wait list in Colorado for that sort of procedure, even though there's only like 1,000 people in their network that were trans, and probably a lot of them were not headed in that direction. There's still a 2-year wait list for vaginoplasty, but it'll get covered. Then there was breast augmentation, which it's strange that that's the one that, out of all of those things, I would have figured vaginoplasty, being so expensive, it would be not covered. But breast augmentation, they will actually require that, like, pictures of a person's chest be sent in, and so they can determine whether it's needed, because, like, breast tissue can't be there already. And that's kind of not fair, because, like, if someone's taking hormone replacement therapy already, it's going to happen, right? There's going to be something there. They're going to have some mammary glands start to develop. And so, like, that's a weird one, but, like, there are navigators that will help people try to get around things so that they can still get their breast augmentation if they're on Medicaid. So, it came to a point in this presentation where we were given certain terms that we should use when we are doing our clinical practice, when we're going to be referring people to that medical network. And they were teaching us, like, this is the old way of saying things, this is the new way. They're teaching a bunch of new terminology, new euphemisms, right? Such as, you don't say M to F anymore, you say trans woman, right? And that's like a strong statement of, we're not thinking about what you were in the past, it's just forward looking in the future. You are a woman. Right? Okay. And then there was, like, going over, like, there was a series of euphemisms that have come out for this, but just in the beginning, they would call it a sex change operation. Right? Then, for a couple decades, when they were trying to make it seem like more of a normal thing and trying to be more politically correct, they would call it a medical transition. And now, what I was just taught in this presentation was, instead of calling it a medical transition, we should call it a confirmation surgery. And immediately in the back of my head, because of this whole SJW shitlord fucking feud that's been going on for, like, years now, there's this little thing in the back of my head, like, that can already see what the arguments about this will be online. And that is that there's going to be a lot of these shitlord talking heads saying, forcing people to call it a confirmation surgery is basically forcing them into saying, well, there is no more debate about whether or not this is right or not. We're just confirming what is already known, right? What they're already feeling, with who they already are. This confirmation, that's what it is. And so it really robbed me of the joy of being in that presentation, because my mind is immediately just anticipating the talking points of shitlords on the internet. You know? And that's not me. I don't even want to be a part of that conversation. Right? The real me that's sitting there watching this presentation, I was actually thinking like, okay, I don't want to take anything away from trans people, right? They have a hard time, you know, like 41% of them have attempted suicide, you know, and like 92% of that before the age of 25. That's a hard thing for them to have to go through. But there's only 1,000 of them in this very large medical network in Denver. How many homeless people are there? Right? That's just, how many homeless people are there in Denver? A shit ton more than 1,000, right? And one of the things that I regularly encounter is homeless people who have not been able to have any dental work done for years. And I know that if I refer them to a dentist that will take Medicaid, if they are needing anything more than a very superficial cavity treated, if they're needing something like a root canal with a post and a crown put on, that shit's not going to happen. Medicaid will look at it and say, well, we'd rather pull the tooth. We'll pay $300 to pull this tooth, but we're not going to spend $1,200 in order to do a root canal and a post and a crown on that, because fuck them. They're homeless, and they should have made different decisions in life. They should have taken better care of themselves while they were on the streets. Those amoral fucking bastards. Fuck them. They don't get to have good teeth. Right? If they've gotten to this point where their tooth is that bad, then we're just going to pull it and cut our losses and not have to pay any more money for their fucking mouths, right? But my experience with homeless people is very different as far as like what some of the decisions that I see made about them. I really feel like it's because people feel like they are morally responsible for their own homelessness. Right? They're not. By and large, a lot of them have mental health issues. Some of them are just victims of circumstance and layoffs and whatnot. And some of them are veterans. You know, some of them deserve a lot more respect than the decisions that have been made about like what sort of care we're going to pay for in order to treat them. And so when I see that a demographic of people that is only about 1,000 people is able to get the expensive surgeries such as vaginoplasty done, I'm like, for the cost of that one vaginoplasty, how many teeth could have been saved, right? It might actually be like 100 to 1. And as a percentage of the population, there's, you know, the large number of homeless people versus the very small number of trans people. And I'm like, what the fuck world are we living in? I don't want to take anything away from the trans people. They fought hard to get what they're getting. They probably have a little bit more fight to go in order to get the breast augmentation just rubber stamped instead of having to send in embarrassing pictures and whatnot. You know, I don't want to take anything away from them. I'm like, well, goddamn, if we're going to do these extraordinary procedures for them, why can't we save the teeth of homeless people? Right? I know, both personally and from a few friends that I have, the horrible toll having lost teeth does to people. You know, a friend of mine, I haven't spoken much about him on this YouTube channel in a while. His name is Dan. He's living in Arizona right now, I think. He's been on the streets for a very long time. He had his teeth punched out in a fight while he was in the army. And the lack of his front teeth brought such a lack of self-esteem to him that he began drinking and became an alcoholic, and it ruined his fucking life, right? And how employable is somebody? You know, how much more likely are they to get a job if they have their teeth fixed versus showing up for a job interview with summer teeth? Some are there, some are gone, some are green, right? We wouldn't have the homeless problem that we do have, maybe, if we started worrying about their appearances as well, and started caring about people in general outside of whether or not they are part of a group of people who we want to concentrate on. You know, when I say homeless people, I mean like people from every walk of life. It touches every walk of life, not just one sort of group that makes people feel warm and fuzzy that we're able to provide expensive procedures for them. No, I want to provide the expensive procedures to a lot more people. You know, open this shit up, and I realize in a broader perspective, I'm probably making a really good argument for universal health care, but in a more baby step sort of way. I just want, at this juncture right now, I just want better dental care for homeless people to be approved, and just not looking at them as they're like amoral pieces of shit that deserve less care because they made some bad decisions, and that's obviously why they're homeless. You know, because that's not the case. It's not the case at all. You know, and just treat people like people. You know, and quit dehumanizing one group, and just treat everyone like they're people that deserve good care. And that's it for this ramble, people.